You have to make deposits before you make withdrawals. I think about that almost every day. You know, when we show up, we have a product, we know our value, we know our worth, and we believe in what we're trying to sell. The problem is everybody else has their own product, their own value, and they believe what they're trying to sell, and they have their own network. And so giving that deposit, if it's, I'm happy to sponsor a charity of yours, I'm happy to, give this free estimate for your client, whatever it may be. I'm here, please take some swag. Let me take you out to lunch. Give a deposit first, and then you take withdrawals.
If you actually want to get the raving fans, you got to go way above and beyond.
Welcome to another episode of Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm your guest, 𝗦𝘃𝗶𝗵𝘁, and with me, as always, is your host, Tom and Mark.
Wow, the energy at the end was very strong. Usually people fade out.
It's the first person that's at request to stand up to say it. Like, I love it. That was awesome.
That is,
how you supposed to get? You got to get it from the gut.
Oh yeah, no, I like it. That was awesome.
man. Mark, I'm seeing a lot of you. This is our first live recording since our event.
Yeah, no, for sure. What a great event. I love the rooftop there, and I can't wait to do another event over there.
Yeah, shout out to Eric Swanson on the Straight Up 𝗬𝗏 sales team and a friend of ours over here at GC, and thank you for putting that together. Listeners, if you missed it, we're going to have more events, but we're also open to your ideas as well, because we love bringing people together. We also don't want it to be stale. So if you have ideas, reach out to us. We want to hear them.
Yeah, we're always open to that, especially in suburbs. People keep asking to do something out here in the suburbs, so we got to do something out here.
I think that's just the suburbanite you saying that. No one has asked me about the suburbs.
I counted at least 25 suburban people that went down there for the event the other night, so I kept a tally of that for real.
I'm just giving you. I'm in the burbs right now. We're sitting here in Roselle right now, so I'm getting used to it. So, all right, man, great episode.
It was. This is a totally different angle, and there's so many people that have the interest in construction. So this will actually help a lot of people think through kind of what they're looking to do.
Have you ever franchised anything or thought about franchising anything?
I have not, no.
Yeah, this is totally new territory for me. I think that's why these episodes end up being better. When you and I don't know anything, we ask genuine questions.
The funny thing is, outside of restaurant franchising, because I've worked on that on the transaction side of things on the brokerage, but you know nothing about it for the most part. So
I know nothing about a lot of things, and this is under a lot of things.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
Under that umbrella.
Today's guest was awesome, and he brings such a high level of energy as well too.
So, all right, cool. What do we got for the housing provider tip?
All right, so housing provider tip, we are getting, by the time this airs, you're going to be at a point of almost no return. You got to get your place rented. And if it means you're dropping the place $100 to get it rented, to make sure you got someone moving in here by no later than November 1st, make sure you do it. The rental season, especially on the north side of Chicago, has already started slow at the time we're recording this in mid-August. So I imagine things are going to totally dry off here unless you're priced right or you have just the most amazing unit.
Cool. No, I agree with that. One of the things and I had this conversation with someone at the meetup, do you drop 100 or do you give that first month free rent? And I personally like giving the first month free rent because then when renewal comes, I have the higher basis point to go off of. I'm not setting myself back. I'm just giving up the 1 month and then I'm kind of caught up.
If you're going to do that though, because what gets people in is the price. So what you want to do is lower the price and then tell them you're going to average that discount over the 12 months.
Yeah, have that disclosed. Yeah. But if you have the option, that's the way I like to do it.
Yeah, definitely. For sure, 100%. But if you could get them in, it's that price point that's going to, in their search parameters, that's what they'll fall for. So,
all right, cool. Today's guest,
high energy. He's done a lot in his time here in Chicago, and he is going to talk to us about franchising and just an angle around construction that we've never really talked about. So he brings a lot of energy, a lot of information, and welcome to the show, 𝗦𝘃𝗶𝗵𝗵𝗁.
Thanks for having me.
Man, I was excited. You and me talked, it's about 4 or 6 weeks ago now, but we talked. You've done so much. You're not even from Chicago. How'd you end up here?
That's a good question. I went to school in Ohio. I went to Miami of Ohio. And when I graduated, I asked my buddies, where are you going? And they said, we're going to Chicago. And the funniest story about that is I said, well, that sounds like a cool place. I'll go there. I had never been to Chicago. The first time I saw it, it was in a moving truck when we were coming over the bridge out of Hammond, Gary, Indiana.
Yeah, the Skyway.
And the first time that I saw the city of Chicago was in a U-Haul, and I landed right in Wrigleyville.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Probably a little nicer than Gary.
Yeah.
A little nicer.
Well, we talk about it all the time here how college buddies do that. It's like so many, all these different schools around the Midwest, they end up in here in Chicago to get their first job, and then they go from there.
This big draw. I mean, I had traveled in Europe with them, and so there was a whole bunch of us, and they just said, that's where we're going. I said, well, that sounds like fun. I'll be there.
That's awesome. So you got here, like, talk to us about kind of the journey into real estate. What'd you go to school for?
So business. So I went to Miami of Ohio, and then I went for business and landed in Wrigleyville in the summer. Waited tables for a hot second and I hauled beer up to the rooftop decks right outside of Wrigley Field. And so that was my first job. And the funny thing about that, I remember my dad saying, he's like, do you have a job? I was like, no, Dad, I don't. And I was like, I'll find one. It's the third biggest city in the country. Like, there's a job out there for me. But he was very confused on how I was moving to a city I'd never been to without a job. So waited tables and hauled beer up a rooftop deck for a little while. And then I ended up at a company called 𝗤𝘵𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗁. And so it's a Fortune 500 logistics company doing inside sales. So moved freight from point A to point B. And I had called on manufacturers for about 5 years. And so that's where I kind of learned my sales chops.
It's funny. So many people I know in real estate, they're successful in real estate today, actually got their start in logistics. So it's kind of, it kind of goes with what I always hear. After, how long did you mess around with that and kind of?
So 5 years, and I use dates a lot because it helps me. So I worked there up until about 2007. And so I was doing fairly well over there as a young kid. I always said I didn't have much life overhead. I had a 1-bedroom condo in Old Town. I had just met my now wife, and we were dating. I don't even think I had a car. I had a scooter. And so, I really internally am built to be an entrepreneur. I just don't like working for other people. I never have. And so come around the late 2007 timeframe, I was like, I just need to do this on my own. And I always had an interest in construction and real estate. And so I said, if I don't leave now, they were starting to give me stock options, and I see people that had been there for years, the golden handcuffs. I said, if I don't leave now, I'm never going to leave. And so I left. And the funny thing about that, because I left in the end of '07, and I remember one of the older managers over there, he goes, what field are you getting into? And I said, well, real estate. He goes, you better get your helmet on, son. And I didn't even know what that meant, but he obviously had known what was coming down the pipeline. And so my entry point into construction and real estate was in the start of '08. And so I had that's how I started in the real estate field, was at the start of the '08 crisis.
And it's so funny how, in hindsight, everything was so obvious it was going to happen. But I mean, even for me, boots on the ground, like I had no clue what was about to just whack me upside the head.
Not for a 27-year-old in logistics. I didn't know what. I just thought, yeah, I'll do real estate and construction.
So where were you jumping into? Like, when you say jumping into real estate and construction, like, what were you going to do day to day?
Right. So I was going to go into the general contracting field. And so I left, got immediately licensed as a realtor, as a managing broker. That's when you can get your managing broker
get it right
license
away.
back there. And I still have that license. And then I also got licensed as a general contractor. And I went to go work for a small builder developer. And he basically said, look, you be my salesman, you go get me jobs, I'll teach you how to do the business. And that's how I started. So we were updating downtown condos is where I started in my field of construction and real estate.
All right. So being new to the industry, who do you go after? Like, talk to me. All right, cool. I'm going to go hunt for you. Where are you hunting? Who you hunting?
It's funny. My first couple of months, I used to walk around the merchandise mart, and I literally would stop like wealthy looking old ladies and say, are you doing your kitchen? Like, who are going in and out of all the showrooms. But then I quickly realized, well, that doesn't work because you can't just hand out cards. I actually got one job off of it, which is crazy. But I ended up starting to go after realtors. I was a realtor at the time, even though I was younger realtor and didn't have experience. But in my head, how do people find contractors? Well, they ask the realtor. And so I started befriending realtors in the industry, and that's how we got our work.
Oh, so walk me through that. You talked to a realtor, said, cool, we'll keep you in mind for the next project.
That's right.
Right. And then, okay, 1 hit, 2 hits. Then all of a sudden you start doing a good job, and that person 2-3 times a year starts calling on you.
That's right. And then once you get into a building, and there's a example of a building downtown in the Streeterville area where we ended up doing like 12 units in that building. I would befriend the property manager, then we'd get on the preferred vendor list, and then as someone moved in, the property manager would give that list to that individual who was looking for construction, and then we'd get the phone call. So then it became realtor referrals, and then the properties that we had worked in the condo buildings downtown.
Yeah. And you got your GC license. Did you have a background in construction at all, like from your family or just from growing up, like high school jobs? Like, or is this completely new?
No, but in Chicago,
you paid your parking ticket so you can get a license.
You paid your parking ticket so you can get your, you need a certificate of insurance and you pay $300 and you can build up to $500,000, which is shocking, right? All things considering, obviously you need the subs to have their licenses, the plumbers and the HVACs and the electricians, but you can GC whatever you want without having any tests, which again is a shocking thing considering the city that we live in.
We were talking about that the other day of how difficult it is to do anything in the city, but you could literally get that within 72 hours.
An entity, a certificate of insurance, and $300.
To be fair though, like you can't do that much damage with it because the subs all have to be licensed, right? There's really not much you can do. It kind of, I can kind of defend the city here that a GC license doesn't. You can't do any work without licensed subs. So like you can't do too much damage in my opinion.
Yeah, but no, you can though, because you could claim that all these people work for me and I don't have so all these employees are running underneath you. Like that's
you still need to have an you still need like the electric, it's not just the GC license. Like,
oh yeah.
It's like the trade, you still need the trades to be licensed. Like that's the safety net or the.
But sometimes in the buildings, if we were painting or we were doing floors or countertops, and we weren't doing plumbing or electric, they would ask, you need to be a licensed GC. No problem.
Correct.
Yeah.
But we're not doing plumbing or electric, and so you just give
or
them
you're
a
not
certificate.
Well, I guess my
like
point is like, you can F up a painting job. Like
Without question,
you can't do electric. Like
without question, you can mess it up if you don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
Well, to the listeners, you just shouldn't hire somebody off of they have a license or they don't have a license.
Correct.
Like that's not the criteria.
But how many people ask, do you have a license? Sure, here's my license.
Yeah.
They have no idea what the criteria was to actually get the GC license. Even the homeowner just sometimes wants it for their edification. Like, are you a licensed general contractor? Yes,
I know some shitty contractors that will use that and take it out to the suburbs too, and like
You can?
they think, you got to Chicago, you're good here. Then
You can. You can use that at different municipalities.
Yeah.
without question. But you still need the licensed trades. You're nothing without the licensed trades,
Yeah.
without question.
Yeah. All right. So you're doing sales for this guy. You're finding deals through these brokers.
That's right.
When did you start actually learning the construction side of things? Like when did you feel like you can walk in there, estimate a project? Because I mean that's a true skill set.
Without question. I mean, and that took me probably 2 or 3 years, right? And so my first project we actually did was on my own condo in Old Town, and that was the first one that he said, okay, well, I'll do it at cost. You're going to manage it, get all the materials, run around, be the gopher. That's how we're going to do this. And so I just slowly learned over time. I used to have him come with me all the time, stand next to me, and then I would write the bids. But this was when we were writing bids on, just a piece of paper almost. I think maybe we were using Excel, but maybe not. And because I can remember him writing handwritten bids and saying, well, this is your bid overall. It was not a sophisticated operation, but I learned a lot and we got a lot of work.
Yeah. And how like 08, 09, like people aren't spending that much money. Like,
No.
right? Or were you just so new you didn't realize like, damn, this is tough.
I had no idea. I mean, I knew it was tough. Once I got into the business, I understood where we were. But that ship, I had burned the boats at that point. Like there was no going back. And I was committed to doing construction and I loved real estate. And so, but people were still, they were buying. There was investors picking stuff up at heavy discounts. And there were, the downtown condo market was completely, faded and not in a depressed. But, there were, still wealthy people. And in any market, right, up or down, there's always wealthy people that have money and they were purchasing. And so we were making the updates, but it was not like it was between 2012 and 2019. Those were some good years for us for construction.
Yeah.
But it helped you didn't know what the norm was. It helped.
I had no idea. Look, it helps when you're young. It helps when you don't have a lot of overhead. It helps when you're hungry. It helps when you're in something new and you're not fatigued by it. To me, it wasn't. I was just hustling.
Yeah. All right, so you guys get started. You're doing these projects. It's hard in a business like this when it's two guys. Mm-hmm. You can become more successful, but it gets hard to scale, right?
No
At
question.
some point,
Right.
You're trading time for money.
Yeah.
When did you hit that point of we can't take on more jobs? Like
Well,
I've hit my ceiling here.
We didn't ever get to that point when I was working for that gentleman in that 4 years. Part
Okay.
of it was market driven. Part of it was my knowledge driven. Part of it was him. He used to like to sit at the East Bank Club and, have a cocktail while I was out running around and he would tell me what to do. He wasn't a highly motivated, with a sophisticated operation. I mean, I was boots on the ground just trying to learn and grind away. And so, we never got to the point where we needed more than us. But he had been a builder for, 10 or 15 years prior to that. So he was experienced, and he had a great group of subs that you're only as good as your subcontractors in this business, right? And so he was good at the management part, and I was the hustler that would run around, deliver materials, and coordinate the guys and find the work.
Got it. And where did you, obviously you guys split up at some point here, right? So what happened?
Well, come around 2012, I was tired of him always being at the 𝗬𝗵𝗶𝗵𝗁, sitting at the pool having a martini. And I'd be like, where are you? It was like 1 o'clock on a Wednesday. He was like, I'm having a martini at the 𝗬𝗵𝗶𝗵𝗁. I was like, I can't deal with this. Like, I need to get a sophisticated operation. The market was changing. And I said, at that point, I had done it for 4 years. And, this is me in general. I just said, well, I can do it myself and I can do it better. And so I can remember the conversation vividly outside of a condo building in like the 1300 block of Lakeshore Drive. And I just said, I got to go. I can't do this with you anymore. I'm going to go do it by myself.
But it's so amazing. Just point out to listeners there, like, that was a good relationship while it was good. Like, you needed his,
without question.
You leveraged everything out of him, and he actually leveraged you back, even if it was just to chill out for a while.
Oh, yeah, no, he loved it. He was super happy.
A lot of people, like, they have to realize, like, there's those mutually beneficial relationships that might just be totally different, polar opposite. That's huge for your careers.
Somebody's got to teach you in this business, and I think anybody that's entering or listening that's thinking of entering, I think all of us probably have got to start by being a grunt or running around and hustling for somebody else.
Yeah.
That's the way that it's got to go. And that's the natural progression.
Yeah. All right. So now you're fully on your own.
Right.
Same business model, right? We're hitting up realtors.
Same business model, but we started to diversify a little bit more. So I opened up my first company at that time in 2012. We were still hitting up realtors, still doing general contracting. I bought my first multifamily building in Wicker Park, and that is as that market was changing. And so, and I remember that, and I think, for me, we utilized the FHA 203K loan. Like, I had never bought, that was our first property. And, we got a 4-unit building for like 5% down and maxed out the 203K loan. And they gave me like $200,000. And I remember the lender was like, I've never even given somebody this amount of money or whatever the max was. And so, so yes, I was doing general contracting, and then I started getting into the light property development side at that point. And then we also started flipping houses.
Okay. Yeah. And this is all Chicagoland?
All Chicago, all downtown Chicago, all north side, because that's what I was familiar with, and that's where we constructed for the past 4 years.
Okay. When, man, maybe I'm skipping ahead, when does franchising
that comes a couple years. That comes a couple years down the road. So, from 2012 up until 2017 is when I operated my first company. That was a construction and development company, and bought my first building, bought my first flip house, and was also doing for-hire general contractor work. I had met my partner now.
And what would you do and not do? Like, if someone wanted to remodel a kitchen, is that too small? Not no, like at the time where you just still guns a-blazing?
Yeah, it didn't matter. I mean, bathrooms, kitchens, full units. I mean, we weren't, and I was not set up as a sophisticated builder. I know sophisticated builders now. I mean, they have big, sophisticated operations, and we were not set up like that at the time. So, I mean, if you called me and said, paint my apartment and sand my floors and do my carpet, no problem. We'll come do that. And so we did that. Smaller jobs lead to a little bit bigger jobs, lead to bigger jobs, lead to full units, lead to full houses. And we ended up around, again, I use dates because that's how I remember, like 2015, I met a well-known designer here, interior designer in the city. And she brought us in. She started bringing us in to bid her work that she already had the clients and she already had the design. And she said, well, you bid our work. And so we started doing that. And we ended up basically becoming her construction arm for like 3 years, from like 2015 up until 2017. And then all the while, I continued to buy multifamily buildings, probably about one a year. And then we would flip houses on the side as well when we saw the opportunity. So it was really like a 3-pronged approach. It was the construction side, a little bit of multifamily, and then a little bit of the house flipping and condo flipping. We flip condos too when we saw the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mentioned it's hard to scale when when you're doing a job like this, but the nice thing is your overhead's still pretty low, right? Like you have a lot of subs. Like, if you don't have to make a huge investment to keep going down all three of those paths?
No, you don't. But, there's obviously pitfalls in construction, and you have to understand how to bid. And at that time, we still weren't using a bidding software. We were still, writing, what was the demo? And you write it out demo. I think it's about $4,000, and we did it that way for a little while. We made great money on some projects, and then some projects we were like, why aren't we making any money? We never really, we would scratch our head. We never really understood why. And it really had to do with the fact that we were still learning to be sophisticated. And, construction is antiquated, right? Like people, even to this day, it's surprising how, people operate like it's 20 years ago.
Oh, that's crazy. Just the amount of checks I write is insane.
You can't give subs. They don't accept, direct deposits. I had you can appreciate this, right? A cabinet painter lived in like Wheaton. And I was like, man, if you give me 2 days notice, I'll just deposit it into your account. No, Mike, I need to come get the check. Right, man?
Yeah, whatever,
come get the check. I'm not, my rule about this is whoever needs the money will come find you. And so I just tell people where I am, fine, come find me. I got my checkbook. I'll write the check, but I'm not finding you.
Yeah, I think it's fair. All right, so this is we have our, three-prong approach. We're doing a lot of different things.
Right.
When did this concept of, hey, we could franchise this and grow, when did that start creeping in your head?
So it was really, we hadn't gotten to franchising yet. So 2017, we were doing these high-end construction projects. And there was one in particular at a very high-end building on Lakeshore Drive, the Carlisle. And I remember it well because it was like 1040 Lakeshore Drive, just very high-end. And the designer had brought us in. It was a full-on gut to the brick, new windows in a high rise, like in this particular unit. And, that project was intense. That project was very detail oriented. And that was really what, kind of broke us, where we're like, we don't want to do this high flying, high end construction for these wealthy clients anymore. The clients are difficult. The buildings are hard. The designers are, perfection. Perfection in construction is a very hard milestone to hit. 95% is relatively easy, but like that next 5% from 5 to 100 is really hard. And so, we just came to the conclusion that while we were doing really nice, pretty projects, and some of these projects were in magazines, like we were we did the construction, she did the design. We just said, we don't want to do this anymore. And I have a vision of me, a memory still of me being like in this big unit, and we were owed, $40,000. And I was on my hands and knees looking at paint droplets on a baseboard, and they were holding up $40,000 worth of our payments because there was a paint droplet on the baseboard. And I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And so that's kind of the evolution. We're not at franchising yet, but what we decided to do was, because we had always reached out to realtors and I had always built my business on realtors had always brought us these smaller jobs to get their houses ready for sale. And, they would say, can you come paint the cabinets? Can you come change the countertops? We just need to do some cosmetic work. Back then, we turned our nose up on it, right? Everybody usually wants to get bigger projects, bigger company, bigger is better. And, but we took that work because we were doing work for the designer, but we were also doing work for the realtors that we knew. And we always had the thought that I can't tell a realtor that's giving me a house no when they want me to do something else, so we'll do that work. But when we decided to make a change, we looked back and we said, what are all the things that we like about construction? Like, we like the before and after. We like the design side. We like constructing. We're good builders. We like the real estate aspect of it. What don't we like? The plans, the permits, the inspections, the high-end clients, the super detail-oriented. Those are the things we didn't like. And so we basically said, well, how do we take all the things we like and strip out all the things we don't like? And then here is how we formed the next company called Renovation Sells, which is the company we operate today, is, hey, what if we prepped houses before they get listed for sale in order to get them sold faster and for more money? Because the realtors were already asking us to do that anyway. It wasn't really a thing. And so that's how Renovation Sells, the company that I operate now, started. And the franchise, which is 2 years after that, is an offshoot of that company.
So go real quick. So Renovation Sells, you guys is this mostly, and I don't want to paraphrase, cosmetic, kitchen and bath, doing it via, hey, we're about to list the house.
That's right.
Or I'm a realtor, my client's going to buy the house. Once they buy it, they want to do the kitchen. Can I bring you guys in?
Well, so it's evolved, and we can get to that point too. So it started initially in 2018, right? So we get to the end of 2017. we have to make a change. We're just not, I always say we got to the top of the mountain, looked around and realized we didn't want to be up here, right? And there's always another peak somewhere else when you're an entrepreneur and climbing. And so in 2018, we said, we're going to stop taking these high-end projects. We're going to stop doing this custom work, and we're only going to focus on prepping houses for sale. So we flipped the model, found Renovation Sells, still had a .com, renovate to sell your house. That sounds like a great name. Let's do Renovation Sells. Stood up a website, put up some marketing, and then I just went back to all the realtors that I had already known and said, hey, we're now in the prep for sale business. Why don't you hire us, right? So 2018, we're just grinding around, kind of getting that message back out, what we're doing, taking whatever jobs we can get. We had a decent first year, did a lot of development of materials in terms of, when you stand up a company, there's a lot of work that goes involved in standing up a new company. And so we had a decent year. And then in 2019, we exploded. Like we quadrupled our business. I think we went from like 400,000 in sales to just under 2 million in a year. Like that was, and we had said,
and was it just all that initial grinding starting to pay out dividends?
I think it was starting to pay off. I think
breaks?
the market was in a good position at that point. I mean, in my mind, 2019 was one of the last neutral markets that we had seen, because then we had COVID and everything has been all over the place since then. And so we just said, look, this business model is working. Realtors were really loving what we were doing. We were the local Chicago operation. Nobody else was doing this prep for sale or, pre-sale renovation. It's not really a thing. It's something that like we came up with overall. But there was a couple other companies across the country that were starting in this pre-sale renovation space. And to this day, there's about 5 of us that operate on a national basis. And what it really does is it ties into the concierge model that we find ourselves in today. And specifically, Compass had a concierge program back then that they started in 2018 that they were giving money to their clients to say, hey, look, we'll give you up to, I don't remember what it was, 5 or 10% of the after repair value that you can put into your house in order to get it listed. And so we were feeding into that model of this concierge level service, pre-sale renovation, et cetera. And we were having this great success. Our company was blowing up. And then one of the big national players who had started on the East Coast came into Chicago. And so at first we were scared. We were like, oh no, this company's expanding. But then secondly, we were like, well, they're expanding. Why can't we expand? Because we knew that this model would work not just here in Chicago, but would work all over the country. And so this is kind of more how we get into the franchising aspect of this well, how do we scale? And so that was the discussion that we had internally. Being someone who has been in the construction and real estate business for a while, I was very aware that you cannot scale properly with strictly overseeing property managers across state lines. And project managers across state lines, right? Because what you get is project management service, $80,000 a year project management service. But what's important is that local interaction, that local service, and hence how we came to franchising. The company that came out of the East Coast was backed up by like $100 million in private equity. They were expanding all over the country rapidly, but they were expanding via project managers. And I thought from the beginning that was a flawed model. And to this day, it actually turned out it has been a flawed model. They're actually not doing that well, and they get very bad reviews. And so when we said, well, we can scale this too, what's the best way to do it? The project management side was immediately off the table because I just know you can't. There's no control. And neither did I want to oversee a multi-state operation with project management, like nightmare, right? No way. And so franchising, well, why don't we franchise it? And so, again, it was like November of 19. I was sitting on the couch. It was right around Thanksgiving. And I did a quick back of the napkin calculation. I was like, so if I got 40 franchises and they do $1 million and we get, X royalty time, I was like, we're going to do that. That's what we're doing. And that was the decision. And about 30 minutes later, my wife, who helped me start the company, was researching how do we get into franchising. So that's how it came about. Well,
there's as a franchisor, there's usually ends up being kind of a business in a box in a way that you're selling.
Yep.
What What did you have to do from your current model, operating on your own, to be able to package that up and be able to
All
sell
kinds
that?
of
Like
stuff.
what kind of level? Use the word professionalism. Like what game did you have to step up to get there?
Everything. I mean, we had to step up every aspect of the game. You know, we had an idea. We had a company that was 2 years old that had, 4x'd its revenue from 18 to 19. And, we were now entering in the franchise space. And so, the first thing you have to do is write a manual. How do you do your business model? And you have to get together what's called your FDD, which is a franchise disclosure document that's governed by the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. And that takes a long time. And so we spent, 18 months getting our business ready to be sold. It really was, we spent about 12 months and then we went out to sell it. But we had to develop sales marketing material because I have to sell and give you information on why are you going to become us. We created videos. I mean, there was so much that went into, the year of 2020. We started in January of 2020 and then we hit COVID, right? And so that whole year of 2020 was all about developing the necessary business in a box and getting us ready to go to market to sell our franchises.
How does that work in another, so you go Milwaukee, whatever, next city X. Talk to, if I'm someone who's interested in this at this time, when you're first getting off the ground,
Right.
am I also then the one responsible for finding the actual people to do the renovation? Like that's probably the hardest part, is finding people you can trust to do construction in any city. Like talk to us, like how.
Well, that's part of it. So, the first step is you have to find the franchisees, right?
Yeah,
And so,
someone who's got this.
So the first step is, we, developed the sales materials, and then we hired on an outside sales company that helped us develop the whole sales cycle, because selling someone to become an entrepreneur, and most of the people that come into our system, have worked for corporate America in some regard. They all have, they all watch HGTV and they all like design and they all have, flipped a house or done some work. And so, but step one was, how can we get people to become us, right? And so that's where we spent a lot of time on at first. And then when we started selling, we started selling our franchise business in a box in June of 21, but we didn't sell our first location until September. But we didn't sell one, we sold 4.
Were you selling cities, states? Like, talk to me about
It doesn't work
territories.
that way. And I will get back to your question,
Yeah,
because
keep going,
that
keep
is a great question, and it often comes up in the process. But the way that the franchise model works is, if there is a subset of, they call them consultants. And so if you've ever been hit up on LinkedIn that said, have you been looking for a job? Are you looking for business coaching? Are you looking for a new career? And a lot of people have. There's a chance, now not all of them, but there is a chance that some of that interaction is from a franchise consultant. And so they will then, have a conversation with you. Oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. Great. Have you ever thought of franchising? Well, I haven't. Let me tell you about franchising. And then they take surveys of those people and, what are your interests? Oh, I like real estate. I like construction. Well, let me show you 3 companies that are in the franchising space: Renovation Sales, 𝗬𝗏 Painters, Floor Coverings International, whatever they may be. And then that's how people, then they get to our system. We then have a specialized sales team that walks them through a cycle and essentially gets them signed up to become a franchisee for us. And so that's how we get people into the door. But during the sales process, to your point, oftentimes, and probably the number one question I get is, I said, well, how do I find good subcontractors? Mm-hmm. That is the number one question. My first response is, you're not looking for them. If you're in a corporate environment and you're trying to, find subs or GC of work, you're not actively looking for those subs. The second response is, once you understand where they are, and once you start to network amongst the individual subcontractors, then that opens up a door. If you ask me today I could pull a plumber, and I don't even call these people anymore. I probably have 30 plumbers in my phone that I've just kept. But a subcontractor is the same way. You ask the HVAC guy, he's got all his cousins, all his buddies. And so then you start to network off of that. Now, the management piece is where the learning curve comes in on the franchise side. Because how do you take someone from corporate and then pull them into an entrepreneurial environment and then teach them how to do construction? And so that is where, and that's something, frankly, that we're constantly working on to get better, is how do we teach our franchisees to be better builders? Because there is a learning curve. The good news is most of these people come from, middle to high management. They're intelligent, college educated. We have a lot of people from the military and specifically from the academies that, are highly motivated and intelligent individuals. And so, can you oversee a painter and a countertop guy? We're not doing plans and permits and big, heavy guts of houses. We're painting cabinets, we're painting walls, we're, taking out countertops and putting them back in place. And so the lift, while still we're in the construction space and can be complicated, it's not like we're gutting and using architecture plans, because that was the whole model I was trying to get away from to start with.
How do you teach? So a lot of your success in those 2 years after starting it came from groundwork you laid with realtors years before.
Right.
Which is one tip to everyone. Like, what you're doing today might benefit you in a far different way than you imagine down the road for a different venture. How do you teach that part? Because that's a certain type of person.
Well,
like, just
that's
knowing
part of the job description, though. And when people show up and we, are thinking about becoming us, I literally say, do you understand this is a sales and networking job? Realtors is who we're going to go after. We want to go after realtors because they're the catalyst of construction. We want to go after realtors because the top 500 realtors in any given market control 90% of the market anyway. So it's a very targeted audience. The issue with realtors is they're finicky, right? They're busy, they're all over the place, and it's hard to get their attention, And really the main way that we've learned, we've tried SEO, we've tried social media, and we do all these things still. It is a ground game. It is a go meet them and become best friends with 5 realtors. And those 5 realtors will get your book of business going. They'll refer you to other people, and then you got to get in. And so there is no real way to. Now we're working on some other things on the top of the funnel, like national accounts. I have some really slick technology that we have that's coming out that will start to fill that top of the funnel. But it is very clear, and we make it clear that it is a sales and networking job. And so if you're not comfortable giving presentations, meeting realtors, picking up the phone, it's probably not a job for you.
Yeah. So where are you guys at today? You mentioned in 2021, September, you get 4 off the ground.
Correct.
Like what's our scale now?
I've got 40 locations in 23 states.
Okay, so it's big.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we're all over the country. And so, and we're coast to coast. So like Seattle and San Francisco, I got 8 locations in Texas, 6 in Florida. We've got 4 or 5 out here in Chicago or the Chicagoland area. And so Northeast, Virginia, DC, all over.
That's a ton of scale. Congrats.
Thank you very
Now I'm
much.
going to turn the question around
Yeah,
though.
go
Like,
ahead.
what was the biggest mulligan?
Everything.
Getting that big. Like, what was the biggest? Like, what the hell am I doing?
Everything. I mean, I think, look, entrepreneurship and people who have run businesses or started business in general, there's days that I wake up and I think I've conquered the world, and there's days I wake up that I think it's all going to collapse on top of me. And that's anybody that's been in the entrepreneur business.
That
and
happens sometimes in the same day for me.
Oh, no, without question. If you own and run a business, and I don't care if it's a management company, if it's a franchise company, if it's a McDonald's, if it's anything, if you're not having wild roller coaster swings, especially in the early years, you're not doing it right.
You're not doing enough. Yeah. You're not being aggressive enough.
And people don't understand. There's some stat out there that's like 80% of the population want to be entrepreneurs, but only 15% are. And there's a reason for that, because it's hard and it's emotionally taxing. And, there's ups and downs. And, to your point, I didn't know. My first hurdle was I spent 18 months and a whole bunch of money, and I didn't know if we could even sell this thing. And we went out in June and nobody bought it. And then all of a sudden we had 4. And now, now I got to build a training program. I didn't know what it's a training program. Like, we literally took this plane like a shell, flew it, and had to build it while it was flying. And so to your point, what are my mulligans? I mean, I can go back and tell you 30 mulligans that we made along the way and mistakes. I wasn't a franchise guy, and I am now, but still I'm not experienced like a lot of people in the franchise. Well, I was a real estate small builder developer that came from Chicago that happened into franchising. And so I still learning every day. There's still things that come up that we don't, what the hell, what's going on? Like, what are we doing?
What's something that shocked you about being a franchisor? Because I know that's a whole, there's a lot of legalities behind it. Like,
it's,
what'd you learn along the way?
well, I mean, it's something that I'm even learning, honestly today is when I have 40 people, I have 40 mouthpieces. When I have 40 people, I have 40 opinions. And it's almost like politics in some respect. in that you have to, you have to listen to 40 opinions, and you have to, and everybody comes from it from their own side, and rightfully so. And so sometimes it's hard. My job as a franchisor is to protect and advance the brand. That is my job. That's my team's job at the executive level. Our partner franchisees, their job is to advance their local business. But that doesn't always match, because sometimes people don't like or understand why we're making decisions. But the decision is always made with an effort to advance the brand as a whole, while trying to also listen to the franchisees in the local markets, because they care deeply. They've invested a ton. They put their life and soul. They're new entrepreneurs. And so that's the biggest, I think, eye-opener that I've come to, is that, when you run a 40-unit system and growing, you have 40 people that care about what you're doing, and how do you include everybody, because sometimes inevitably you can't. They're not going to like every decision that you make.
Yeah. Out of those 40, what separates the ones that are killing it versus the ones at the bottom of the pile?
Great networkers. Sales and networking, and it's number one. Thou who is a great sales and networking and can foster and build great relationships gets the most opportunities, and that's what separates the top and the bottom, the hustle, and the continuous. And look, and there's people that do hustle, and it's hard. It's still hard operation to get stood up. It's hard to go to realtors and get it out. But if you follow the process and you do it day in and day out, and you do it hard, those are the people that are the most successful in our system.
Got it. And as a franchisor, so you have like a training program, but what are maybe some other bigger areas of support that separate you from some of the competition? Like if I'm looking to become a franchisee,
sure,
why would I choose you?
The design. So we have our design is all built into the franchise model. So I've got 4 designers that are in downtown Chicago that all they do is pump the design back out to the franchisees. And we have a whole process that we use tech where we can, because we're doing cosmetic renovation, we can get in, videos and walkthroughs, and then, in some proprietary stuff that we have built, and then designers can design remotely. And so we then can return a full-fledged design to them with all the materials and the ordering within 7 days. And so we're really good at that. Obviously, as a franchisee, you get the website, you get the marketing collateral, you get the support from our team, you get the training, and a variety of other things. And that's why people buy into a business, is for, that type of support. And, you can skip the line of the 5 years of brain damage that it took me to stand this up. You can take it. The record was, I think, like 10 days. We had someone that left training and got their first job in 10 days. It's not always like that, but, you can sign, get trained, and you can be operational within just a couple weeks.
Yep.
On the investment side, as you've worked on this, you kept growing the investment side too. Where's that going?
I stopped the investment the last, and I laugh because the last building I bought was in 2020. And I closed on it 3 weeks before COVID.
This is a Pilsen building, right?
It was Pilsen building.
You got to tell the story.
Yeah. So I had and this is where I learned, this is really where I learned, like, don't chase shiny objects, and you have to focus. Because, back to 2012 and through 17, I was running a construction business and trying to build and be a developer. And look, I moonlighted as a developer. I was never a true developer, right? I can take a 6 or 10 unit building, and just because we have construction knowledge, we can do that. But we're not talking about like complicated ground up stuff. And so in 2020, I identified a building in Pilsen. It was in the East Pilsen area, if you know where that is. They were about
actual Pilsen.
It was actual Pilsen, just west of Chinatown over there. They were supposed to build this big 300-unit development. It was on Canal Street is where it was, just east of the highway. It was green lighted. This building, it was 2 buildings. It was a 6-unit building and a 4-unit building that were right next to each other. It was they were big, they were old, they were value add play. And, I had started to put the deal together in October of 19, got all the investors, or my one investor in, had the plan. We closed on it, I don't know, let's say February 15th, closed. Our plan was offensive. We're going to, start to get people out, take the vacant units. We're going to invest in it. We're going to do what we do. It was a very cosmetic update type of building with some systems. And then we ran right into the teeth of COVID. And then, what happened with all the, you guys know this, the tenant laws where you couldn't evict people. And we just all of a sudden got smacked in the face, and we're in a defensive position for about 24 months. And so we did some updating, but to your point, that was the last building that I bought. And it more had to do with my franchise business was growing, and it takes full time of mine. I don't have any time to put into, doing the development side.
The market was on your side pricing wise. How did you come out with that? Did you sell it, or you still have that?
We ended up selling it. I think I bought the 2 unit. It was 10 units, 100 a door, which I thought was a good price. In that area. And again, we didn't know what was going to happen. So like the real estate market was good. They were supposed to put this big 300 unit development up. And so, I think, so we bought it all in for like $1 million plus closed. So like 1.1. I think I ended up, getting out of it after all fees for like 1.15. So like I paid off my investor, he got his money out. I think I walked away with like 20 grand. And that may have been before taxes. And that was,
so you got some good write-offs.
We got write-offs in that, but it was 18 to 24 months of pain.
Yeah,
the
opportunity costs of the
we had people
time.
that stopped paying rent at one point. We had rented one of the units. We got I don't know, bait and switched, right? Like someone came in, and you all know about this. Like someone came in, and then a drug dealing operation got in, and we couldn't evict them, and they were dealing drugs. Like it became a liability. Like I was like, this is going to go bad. Like I got to get out from underneath this thing. And so I ended up, thankfully we sold it. And then I was like, no more. I'm not doing, I know how to do buildings, and I love buildings. I'm just not right now.
Yep. So what's on the docket then for the franchise? Like, is this, hey, we want to get to, is there a 2-year goal, a 5-year goal? Like or play it by ear?
No, I think growth is, what comes with fast growth is, sometimes you have challenges, and to go from 0 to 40 in 2.5 to 3 years, it's hard. And we had to build a lot of things and do a lot of things, and we made mistakes. And so we're constantly learning from those mistakes. I mean, listen, there's so many markets around this country that we would work in that we're not in. But I also know that we're in a position where, like, let's have some sustainable growth. Let's make sure we put in the systems and the processes and refine them for our franchisees. We just came through the teeth of, one of the hardest residential real estate markets that we've seen in 30 years with, what happened in the residential housing. And my space is very much, single family residential homes. And it's been a tough market for the past 18 months. And so, we're in the process of how can we continuously, every day we wake up, how can we help our franchisees? What can we do to make them better? How can we give them more work? How can we train them better? And that's the goal. And so, yes, I want to continue to grow and expand. And yes, we do have, full pipelines of people who are looking to be us all over the country. But we're also are hyper-focused on trying to get the systems and the processes continuously ironed out to make it as best as it can be.
What markets are you not in right now that you want to be in that maybe one of our listeners might be?
Tennessee. I'm shocked that we're not in Nashville. Part of that has to do with the fact that there's some tighter GC laws out there where you have to sit, unlike the city of Chicago. You have to sit for a GC test, and actually may have some years. California is another market, but California is a wonky place to operate in. We have one operation out there, but that's another market there's a lot of opportunity in California, but the licensing laws are fairly hard. But we've got markets. When we sell a market, we sell zip codes and protected zip codes. And so in my head, I'm thinking of Houston, for example. Houston is a big suburban sprawl, and so we have one gentleman that's down there, and he may own 2 territories, but Houston's got 8 more that can. And so like the fill-in effect of like, how can you continue to take some of these markets and add more people to the existing markets that just, maybe not operate the north side, but the northwest side. And so that's more where we're trying to advance.
All right. I want to, whether it be the attorneys that listen, other investors, you've hit you're really good at networking with realtors, and you gave some things. What's some good? There's a lot of people listening that need to be better networkers with real estate agents for whatever their angle is.
Yeah.
What's some of the tricks to get in with them?
Show up consistently. And I think that's the hardest part. And I had a good friend of mine, and this resonates well. There's a gentleman, 𝗬𝗁𝗶𝗵𝗁, who's a mortgage lender. I don't know, maybe some of your listeners may know him, but he said, you have to make deposits before you make withdrawals. I think about that almost every day. And I told him I think about that the other day when I saw him, because it really resonates. Like, you can't go into something, and it's hard because it's not human nature, right? Especially when you're in sales. When we show up, we have a product, we know our value, we know our worth, and we believe in what we're trying to sell. The problem is everybody else has their own product, their own value, and they believe what they're trying to sell, and they have their own network. And so giving that deposit, if it's, I'm happy to sponsor a charity of yours, I'm happy to, give this free estimate for your client, whatever it may be. I'm here, please take some swag. Let me take you out to lunch. Give a deposit first, and then you take withdrawals. And that's a lot easier said than done. But also the showing up, go to the places where the realtors are, show up consistently, become involved with their organizations and operations. And then when they give you the opportunity, and this is what I say a lot to my franchise partners, right? Everybody loves you when things are going well, but you gain your raving fans when things go sideways. And it's how you act and operate in that environment is when you really gain your raving fans. And so just keep that in mind, right? When you get that opportunity, how do you act when things, especially in construction, things go sideways? Are you going to do the right thing? Or are you going to say, you know what? I'm not taking that $300, you pay for it. Well, you've just burned a bridge over $300 that could be a source of revenue for years to come.
I love that. I love what you said. I really resonate. 𝗬𝗁𝗶𝗵𝗁 had something out recently where it's like, all right, when you screw something up or something goes wrong, whether it's your fault or not, usually getting back to zero or even.
The gift card just gets you to even.
Yeah, the gift card.
You still owe for the time and effort.
If you actually want to get the raving fans, you got to go way above and beyond what even is to that's where you get the raving fans. So,
I listened to that one. You had the restaurant analogy on it.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Yep.
So, all right, we ready to wrap here?
Ready, man.
All right, let's do it.
All right, what's your unique ability? How have you been able to do so much while so many other people wish they could?
A couple things. Number one, I feel like I have good vision. Like my superpower is like I can see the landscape, what it could look like. And then the second thing is I project, and I say this to entrepreneurs a lot. Like, if I have an idea, I tell people that idea because then it makes it real. Yeah. And then I just do it. And I start small and I just keep going. You can think yourself into nothingness, but if you actually start it, and you tell people that, I'm going to do this, it actually makes it real. And then you hold yourself accountable to do it.
Yeah, we do it on the podcast all the time. We say it on here, then we have to do it.
Yeah, we say we're going to throw you back, and then we have 4 weeks to put it together.
It's a perfect example. Like, well, I'm going to do this. Well, now you just made it real, and you better do it, or you're going to be a liar.
People actually listen, too, so now we're held accountable.
All
right, what is one piece of advice you would tell someone that is yet to buy their first property, either here in Chicago or anywhere else?
That is a great question. I would say network and start getting to know everybody who's involved in the process. It starts almost with the bankers, in my opinion, the bankers and the real estate agent. And so that's part of that. Stop thinking about it. Start making phone calls and meeting people and asking questions.
Good stuff. What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? I'm very active, so I'm always outside. I'm actively working out, and I like to play any and all sports. So anything you want to play, I'll play it, and I'll want to win.
There you go. All right, give us either a good book, podcast, or self-development activity that you'd recommend to our listeners.
Meditation. And so I've been meditating for 6 years. It's by far the best thing that I've ever learned how to do in my entire life. And so when the world gets hard, I meditate more, and it keeps all those thoughts and that negative spiral at bay. And if people have been thinking about it, it is real, and it allows you to calm your mind and your energy and to focus and not get distracted by things that don't matter.
Side question then, one piece of advice for someone who's trying to get that off the ground, right? Because I hear a lot of people say like, I tried, I got distracted, didn't work.
Same thing, start, because you can start with 5 minutes a day. If you cannot find 5 minutes a day to sit quietly and then do it consistently, it takes 3 weeks. That's what they say, to form a new, or to make a habitual change, a habit changing foundation. And so, commit to just sitting, closing your eyes quietly and breathing for 5 minutes a day for 3 weeks. And then it becomes more natural. And I've been doing this for 6 years now. I know when I don't do it, it affects me more when I don't do it. And also give yourself, if you miss a day or two, it's okay. You know, sometimes people want to be like, I'm going to do it every day for a year. Well, that's not sustainable. So.
Cool. All right. Other than yourself, name a good resource that you'd refer to other Chicago real estate investors.
A good resource for other, I'm going to give a blanket statement, a community bank. And I say that is because I bank with a community bank that I've banked forever. And it's a relationship bank. And so sometimes, and everybody's got their own way of doing it, but if you go to the big box banks, and everybody knows who they are, you don't get the same level of service and you don't get that same level of friendship and people who actually know who you are. And so as you grow, when you want to do something, the big banks will keep you in a box. And this is a very general statement because a lot of people out there may say, well, that's not the case. But I think community banks are a great way.
I agree. Who would you refer? What bank?
I use First Eagle Bank.
Oh, okay.
Down on.
Yeah, we had Farouk on.
Farouk has not been on.
Farouk, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Farouk's
get him on.
my banker.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, or I'm sorry, he's not, but he's I know Farouk.
Yep.
And 𝗬𝘃𝗲𝗀𝗏, who owns the bank, and Rose, who's over there. Like that's what I mean. Like you get to know the owners and the people who actually control the bank, and that's a much better relationship.
Well, it seems like in those community banks as well, so people don't move around as much as like from bank to bank.
No,
they
don't.
Job hop.
No, they don't.
All right, Michael, thank you so much. You provide a ton of value to our listeners. How can they learn more about you? Is there any way they can provide value to you?
That's a great question. I mean, the best thing, look, I love entrepreneurship in general. And I feel that as entrepreneurs that have been there and, are growing, that the way, if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to have a conversation with them to help. That's more the value. I like to pay it forward. I have mentors and groups that I work with that help me. And so the best value I can have is if I can help somebody, I'm happy to help them.
All right. Chicago Fact. Who are we playing for and who's our sponsor?
All right. Sponsor today is 𝗓𝘂 Financial. We're playing for Gary O'Hara, who bought a t-shirt at Straight Up Chicago Investor merch store.
All right, Gary, let's see if we can do this. So we were talking about some high-end condos here. So this is kind of topical. In the Hancock building, there are several offices and roughly how many condos? And your options are 300, 700, 1,200, or 2,000. Roughly how many condos in the John Hancock building?
300.
I'll say 700, but I do think it's 300.
700.
Oh,
Come on.
700?
700?
Yeah. We managed
This is
two of them.
according to Wikipedia.
The funny thing is I actually flipped a unit in the Hancock building, and I decided I'd never work in the Hancock building again.
It's
After
difficult.
that, you have to transfer elevators at like the 50th floor.
Yeah.
So you go up all the office, and then you transfer elevators. You have to move all your material down the hall to a different elevator, and then go. It takes like an hour just to get to the unit up there. And anyway, that's why I said
That sounds terrible.
Just a
300
parking
units.
garage. Horrible. We managed 2 units there, and it's just the level of
tough.
Just to get a
Tough.
simple work order completed is a struggle.
I feel like I should have known that because I actually owned a unit in the Hancock building.
All right, so 700 units. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
you got it right, though.
Perfect. Gary O'Hara, you get a $50 gift card brought to you by 𝗓𝘂. So, man, thanks for coming on here today, Tom. Thank you. As always, listeners, check out Straight Up Chicago Investor merch store at straightupchicagoinvestor.com. I actually saw somebody the other day at the Jewel over in Rolling Meadows that had a shirt on. So it's kind of cool. I went in there to get one of those garbage little tickets, and I saw somebody. I'm like, nice.
I'm starting to see them more when people post on like Facebook. Like, I'm at my property. I'm like, I like that shirt.
Yeah. So, all right. Thanks for coming out. And Tom, thank you as always. And listeners, we'll see you next week.
Thanks all.